Is exactly interview for the morning right here on News and Views on Salam Media. We're now going to be looking at the issue around Zimbabwean exemption permit holders. South African employers of Zimbabwean nationals who hold these permits are advised to start making preparations ahead of December 2022. We are told that it is Cabinet's decision to end these special permits that allow approximately 180,000 Zimbabweans who live and work in the country to now return home at the end of December. So let's understand, who are these people? Why were they allowed in the country in the first place? And why is Cabinet taking this stance to repatriate possibly 180,000 or more Zimbabweans who hold these special permits? We are joined by Lindokuhle Mdabe and also Roshila Nair. Lindo is an attorney at Lawyers for Human Rights, and Roshila is the convener of Global South Against Xenophobia. Let's start with you, Lindokuhle. I hope I am pronouncing your name correctly. A very good morning to you. Welcome to the program. And how do you respond to my opening statement this morning?
Well, yeah, I think there are two questions to the statement, I suppose, or the two points of reflection on the statement. The first one is who. The who question is I think an important question because I think it brings to the conversation what I think is a human face, something that is often forgotten in these policy decisions. Um, Now, who are we talking about? We're talking about people who came to the country possibly in 2008 when Zimbabwe was really having some form of political instability and that has led to some economic instability as well. Economic decline. That's the word that I'm looking for. And what you've had over the years is this migration from a huge number of Zimbabweans moving into the country. And of course, when they were moving into South Africa, they had a couple of challenges. One of them was that we saw that many of them could apply as asylum seekers or refugees because they had been victims of certain forms of persecution. But others came into the country as economic migrants, and others were just undocumented. They were waiting in the queue, and there were so many of them, so much that the decision was taken by the government at the time to take them off the refugee and asylum seeker system, to give them a special dispensation so that they're documented in the country. There were a couple of advantages that were mentioned at the time when the decision was made. And one of those was that they were going to contribute into growing the South African economy, and that they were going to contribute in that decision was a good decision because it was going to alleviate a situation of criminality, and that it was good for the South African government to know who was the country and begin to document those people who were in the country. And so those are
Okay.
the people that we're talking about. Yes.
All right, let's bring in Roshila Nair here. She is convener of Global South Against Xenophobia. We do know, Roshila, hi there, welcome to the program.
Hi, Julie. Thank you very much for
Okay,
having me here. And
lovely
hi,
to
Linda
have you
Kushle.
here. Okay, you heard my opening statement and Lindokuhle responding to that. Um, Obviously, there's a whole host of other questions that need to be asked and answered here as well, and very especially regarding xenophobia. We do know that these people, with these Zimbabweans with special permits, not all of them are necessarily professionals. A lot of them are economic migrants, and a lot of them are possibly unskilled labor. And that's where the threat of xenophobia possibly comes in, because we have a very high unemployment rate in South Africa, and South Africans are wanting these people to go back to where they came from. And I don't say this unkindly. I feel for them, and undoubtedly in the past years that they have been in our country, they have made a meaningful contribution. What do you feel is now going to play out? How can we stop government from taking this action against these special permit holders?
Yes, thank you, Julie. This is a very, very important intervention that Salam Media is making, because I think the more people who understand the critical need for South Africans to speak out about this, the better it is going to be for our country, because we are a democratic country, but there have been so many things that have gone wrong here, and this kind of violence that is playing out regarding non-locals as the foreign nationals who are part of GSAC's Global South Against Xenophobia, wish to be called, is actually going to push us to another level of violence and unscrupulousness in this country. So just to say that the ZEP cancellation must be seen as a catastrophe. It must be seen as something that is going to add to the woes of this country, because it is a very inhumane, the terms of the cancellation are very inhumane. Nobody is saying that the DHA shouldn't have policies to regulate the flow of migrants coming into the country. But as you've rightly pointed out, it's the particular group of migrants that we must look at. These are mostly poor and working class people who've left Zimbabwe because they simply cannot survive there. The conditions there are so terrible that just getting a plate of food is difficult. And yet we have the same thing happening here
Absolutely,
in South Africa. So what you have is a country, South Africa, that is basically part of the AU, where it is supposed to use that organization to speak out against other African countries that are doing this sort of thing to their people. And they've not done that with Zimbabwe. They have basically supported the Mugabe regime and now the current president's regime. And also they themselves are doing it to South Africans here. We have such a high, 40% unemployment, almost 70% of people living in poverty. So it's almost inevitable that you're going to have this clash of, people who are seen as outsiders. But it's not inevitable in the sense that people come here, they live in communities, and I believe that it's not all South Africans who are in that situation who are necessarily calling for the expelling and pushing out of the Zimbabweans and other non-locals who are here. What has happened is that it has become politically expedient for the ANC government to find a scapegoat. And you have here in the country, the ZEP holders. You're talking here about 180,000 people. 180,000 people, half of them possibly unemployed and the rest not. Is that going to make a big difference in terms of the actual problem of unemployment that we have, which is a result of corruption and a mishandling, a mismanagement of the state by the ANC government? So we need to weigh what it means for this short-term solution that people on the ground, some people on the ground are pushing for, and which the ANC government is not really saying, no, this is not a proper solution, because it actually will lead to, in the long term, problems for our country, because we are a democracy now. And that means we must always show a humanitarian face. We're an open society. Anyone from South Africa can go to another country, look for a job, live there, as a migrant. The same should be afforded to people here. But because these are poor people, the government has signed up to conventions, which means that they have to honor the obligations and the rights. They have a responsibility towards migrants, asylum seekers, refugees who come here. These are international conventions based on the rights of people internationally. And if the government, if the government is not going to do this, then it's going to be failing South Africa and international community on many levels.
All right. So the other question that we need to also pose, and let's go to Lindokuhle, is the issue around illegal immigrants in the country. These are ZEP holders. They are here legally. They've been given a permit to be here for a particular space of time. Let's put the illegal immigrants to one side. Let's park them for now, Lindokuhle. Let's look at the human rights of these people. Can you intervene on their behalf? Have people actually engaged with your legal firm to try and prevent them from going back to Zimbabwe? Because they're going to go back to a very, very bleak future, are they not?
Yeah. Look, we are doing what we can. Let me tell you what we're doing and what else is happening outside of us. What is happening outside of us is that there are three applications that are now before the court, and one application was brought by the Helen Suzman Foundation, and the gravamen of the complaint in that application is that a decision that was taken by the minister is unlawful because it was taken without meaningful consultations with the people who will be affected by the decision. And I think that is at the center of what the complaint is about. And then there's a second application which really deals with the ZEP holders having a right to permanent residency, or having a legitimate expectation to expect that at the end of this ZEP holdership, what they're going to have is some sort of route to permanent residency or route to citizenship, which is understandable given that if you've dedicated and lived your life for decades and have worked in this country, and your children are here and you're settled socially and economically, you then expect that over time that you'll be accepted in that country in ways that nations are able to accept those who come to their country. And the only way I see this happening is through permanent residency, and it's through citizenship. And this is not an unreasonable request from number of permanent from a number of ZEP holders.
Let's look at the possibility of that happening. And then question number 2, let's go to the illegal immigrant situation, and I'll allow both of you to respond to that. Will illegal immigrants that are not ZEP holders feel that this is a very biased judgment, that a certain section of immigrants are allowed to remain on in the country and hopefully become permanent residents, and illegal immigrants, for whatever reason, are always going to be marginalized? And that's where the xenophobic situation then flares up every now and again in the country, all around the country. Let's go to you first, Roshila. Can you respond to both from your point of view, and then we'll come back to you?
I think it's a very reasonable thing to ask for and expect. People have made homes here. They've built relationships with local communities. They've have families. They've married South Africans. They have children with South Africans. So you can't split up those families. It's a very cruel thing to do. And secondly, I think some people have been living here for 20, 10, 15 years. So we in GSACS have been discussing this, and we feel that people who have been here for 5 years and more should automatically qualify for permanent residency. And that the problem has been that DHA has not properly integrated people, or has been very inefficient in terms of how it has produced its policies and implemented them. So you cannot now try to catch up by doing this kind of blanket cancellation without consulting the stakeholders, who in this case are ZEP holders. And the circumstances of each one being here is also very different. So, for instance, you've got some of the asylum seekers and refugees who took on ZEP. Now, you can't expect them to go back to Zimbabwe. They face a serious threat of harm there. And so we are saying that the terms of the cancellation, in order to regulate the inflow of people into South Africa, is very unfair, and that is where we can intervene. We can say that the period for sorting all this out needs to be extended. Those who do qualify for permanent residency, and those terms there of who qualifies, what the break of period would be, etc., needs to be negotiated. At the moment, 1 year is basically causing incredible anxiety and stress amongst people, because a lot of them feel that they don't even want to apply for other permits because they are being refused, or they're going to be, on the 31st of December, just deported, and everything that they've worked for, and paid taxes for in this country while living here will just be lost to them. And then you've got the threat of police cracking down on them, and then also people from Operation Dudula, for instance, vigilantes, violating them, perpetrating violence against them. So it has created a kind of a bottleneck and a flare-up of intense humanitarian crisis, I would say, and the potential for conflict there. So we are saying, as a start, that grace period needs to be extended, and there needs to be a reasonable decision made about people who should get permanent residency. Illegal immigrants, yes, we do have them here, and that has been a direct fault of the failure of systems in this country, including DHA, SAPs, etc. Now, you can't make up for it by overnight just cracking down on innocent people. You need to have a system in place where you build an efficient and thorough system that's going to weed out those with illegal and criminal, people who have evaded the policy and not gotten legal papers, and those who are here to do illegal criminality, deeds. And just like in South Africa, for South Africans, there are laws here which prevent people from doing harms, from behaving in criminal ways. The same must apply to people who come here to live, but you cannot conflate the identity of an illegal immigrant to everyone who has come here from another country. And that is exactly what is happening here in this country when you see the violence, the xenophobic violence that is taking place. And that is what the government should be paying attention to, because under its watch, it should not be allowing this sort of thing from happening in poor communities.
Okay, let's go to you, back to you, Lindokuhle. Thank you very much, Roshila. Let's look at the issue around expectations from illegal immigrants. We know that our borders are very porous. We know that the current situation that we're faced with here is directly due to a very inefficient current government, the bloated public officials, ministers, and the mass-scale corruption that has been going unabated for years on end. That's the reason why we find ourselves in this situation. But having said that, as lawyers for human rights, Lindokuhle, how do you respond to those questions, and also the issue around expectations of illegal immigrants? And once, let's, the best case scenario is that the ZEP holders do get permanent residence. What signal is it going to send out to illegal immigrants and other immigrants wanting to come into the country through our very porous borders?
Um,
Yeah,
yeah,
over to you.
the link between the two. I don't know if you're linking them, but I'm going to take the question as it comes. The link between the two is a bit difficult to deal with.
Okay.
And
I'm talking about expectations. I'm talking about bias.
yeah,
So if the ZEP holders, if it works out for them, all goes well and they get permanent residence, or possibly they are, their stay in South Africa is extended by a couple of years. What are we creating here as far as illegal immigrants are concerned? Are we not creating a monster? Or are we not creating unrealistic expectations as far as this other grouping of people are concerned?
look up. There are organizing principles that one has to work with, and I can give you a few. The one that are already established in law, and others that are already established in our political morality, if you want to put it like that. And one of them, I think, is Ubuntu, and I think that's an organizing principle, which I think is at the core of why the decision was made. Another organizing principle is the fact that is the refoulement principle, non-refoulement principle. It is that one should never really be sent to a country where they will face possible persecution. Now, and if I speak as a lawyer, that is a difficult thing, right? Because law is very specific about what constitutes persecution. But I think economic migrants are people that are often outside the gaze of law, but they're facing a real situation. I
Absolutely.
I think I think climate migrants are people that are often outside the gaze of law, but they're facing serious challenges. And if a while ago we were facing difficult issues in Mozambique, of floods. I would imagine people from Durban who have lost everything, if they were to make a decision to move to a different country
Yeah.
or a different place altogether, it will be understandable. These situations are very real. And when one is dealing with the law, one is often perhaps disregarding everything else that is outside of the gaze of law. Now, these are organizing principles. These are the reasons why certain decisions should be made. These are moral decisions, and they require value judgment. I would think at the top of my if I were a minister and had these principles, working with these principles, seeing that the minister is coming from a rich culture of from his own ancestors of Ubuntu, dignity, and all of those things, and non-refoulement. I would say to the extent that there are illegal foreigners in the country, that needs to be attributed to government, and government needs to make right on that. To the extent that we are unable to use the law to cover other migrants who have valid excuses to be in the country, we need to amend the law to make sure that we cover those people in difficult situations, like climate migrants or economic migrants. And and so I wouldn't see it as a question of pitting one group against the other. I would the issue of illegal migrants is the issue of systematic failure, and it's nothing beyond that. But but also we are beginning to see one pattern which I think is really concerning. It is that when people make these applications before the Department of Home Affairs, and these applications are refused, it is often based on poor quality of decision making at the Home Affairs, and one becomes illegal because of that poor quality. And then it introduces you to a different problem, which is now you need to now find a lawyer. I am an attorney, right? I can't afford a lawyer. I can't afford myself. Most of the time, I'm busy assisting people, and I can't afford to take time off to assist myself. Now, I can't afford legal services. What I'm trying to suggest is that there's very limited access to lawyers, the judiciary, and courts. Now, if you get a poor decision and your only option is for you to review that decision, where do you go? And you're poor in the country, you're trying to establish yourself, you're trying to find some sort of a decent living in this country, and you're struggling to do that. Where do
Okay.
you?
I'm so sorry, guys. I have another 2 or 3 minutes left to the interview, and there's just so much more that I would like to unpack. So, short answers from both of you. I'll still stick with you, Lindokuhle. What are the chances that these 180,000 Zimbabweans will win their case through organizations like yourself and the Helen Suzman Foundation, etc., and become permanent residents? That's question number one. And then to you, Roshila, the question would be, in terms of xenophobia, once they have become legal, they are protected. No one, locals cannot attack them, attack their property, etc., because they are legal and they are here to stay, so to speak. And of course, the all important question is, what is the likelihood that they would get permanent resident status? Let's go with you first, Lindokuhle.
Well, I think they have good chances. That's the only thing they have. This is the only route they have. They have good chances. They're making good arguments. The argument is really this: if you know that the decision is going to affect a huge number of vulnerable people in the country, the least you can do is consult them and ask them what their situation is. Our view is that that was not done, and I think that is at the core of what this is. These cases are about, and I think they have good chances because of that.
Please, God, let's hope that that does in fact happen and it works in their favor. Roshila, your final thoughts.
My final thought is to echo what Linda Kushler has said. I personally believe that the ZEP holders have a very strong possibility for permanent residency here. They are part of our communities. They've contributed a lot to our communities. They exhibit Ubuntu in terms of having come here in the first place. And you know what? We've had enough of apartheid and division, Black people suffering. We must actually take the bull by its horns and stand for what we believe in. And this is where I want to encourage the listeners of Salam Media to say, you are part of communities. Stand up for your brothers and sisters. Go out there when the court cases are happening. Stand outside the courts and make your voices heard. Write to the media, write to the minister, and say that this is what it means for us to be human, for us to protect vulnerable people, for us to to be able to enter and exit communities, because it is human nature to, even outside of conflict, to be able to leave some place, to travel to another place, to belong to where you want to be, because we are all human beings. That may sound like it's a very abstract thing, but at the end of the day, that is what Ubuntu teaches us, that I'm a human being because you're a human being. And in everything, including the politics that we must demand for, including the processes and the way in which we air our grievances, we must bring that into play. And this can happen if ordinary people, Muslims, South Africans, the people stand up and say, actually, you know what? We want this. We want the ZEP holders to be part of our society because they add to our society. And we want to be seen as a society that is one that honors and embraces the dignity of other human beings.
Thank you both so very much for highlighting this very serious issue. I had to bring the illegal immigrant situation in here as well, because undoubtedly that is part of the bigger picture. Very quickly, Lindokuhle, before I get fired, the chances of when do we know when this is going to court, and how we can go out in our droves to support this decision?
Yeah, the hearing is between the 5th of October until the 7th of October. These are the 3 hearings are taking place in the Pretoria High Court. And I think we should all go there and support them. I'll be there.
Okay,
Specifically.
great.
Yes.
Great. Please shout out to us. Let's have a follow-up interview shortly after the hearings so that we can just keep people abreast of what's going on. Thank you both very much. It was wonderful. Till the next time, as always, go well and God bless.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
It is exactly 10:16, time for me to wrap up. Thank you indeed for your company today, and till next week, Monday at the same time, as always. It is a big thank you to the production team, and that's you, Polani and Nasreen Naidu. Assalamu alaikum and Khuda Hafiz from me, Julie Ali.